Get my papers in order here, sorry. First and foremost, okay, good morning. Let's get started. Today is May 9th, the regularly scheduled Syracuse Preservation Board meeting. Roll call present at today's meeting are
Nicole Fragnito.
Kyle Gregory.
Jeff Romano. Thank you.
Hillary Donahue and Julia Marshall are excused this morning.
Okay, thank you for that. May I have a motion to accept the meeting minutes of the meeting April 18th?
I move to accept the minutes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion, any modifications to those minutes?
No.
I just have one for CA 2408, the 303 Berkeley. Third line down, short flight of stone steps leading to the front door. We did acknowledge those were limestone.
Limestone.
So I just want to put on the record that they're
Limestone.
existing limestone treads, hence our recommendation for limestone treads. That's all I have, so.
And motion.
A motion to accept the minutes
Or-
as amended?
As amended, yes. Okay. Or we have the motion, so of a vote.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
A vote to accept the minutes?
All
Yes.
in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Minutes pass.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, public hearing was canceled for today, so we're going to
That's
move
right. Yep.
right along to new business. So, Kate, want to go ahead and introduce that, please?
Sure. Thank you. This is minor site plan review number 2426. It is for 1818 South Salina Street, known as the Albert House, as well as more recently as the Ashley Arms. The house was designed by Archimedes Russell and was constructed in 1890. It is part of the South Salina Street Historic District, which is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The project includes exterior rehabilitation of the house and carriage barn, and the role of the board this morning is to provide comment to zoning regarding the proposed rehabilitation work and any potential effect it will have on the historic character of the property.
Okay, great. Thank you. Please introduce yourself for the record.
Michael Malda, Holmes King Colquist and Associates, 575 North Salina Street. Ashley Arms is going to be going under some renovation and maintenance work. We will be removing the majority of the wood clapboards. This will allow us to install new vapor barrier. The asphaltic paper behind the clapboards is failing. The clapboards themselves have been water damaged, salt damaged, repainted many times, sanded to the point we can't sand them anymore. So we intend to replace those, install a vapor barrier, and we'll be replacing the clapboards in kind with the fiber cement product with the same 4-inch reveal that's on the current house. We'll be replacing some of the wood trim with composite to match the existing details. We'll be replacing all the windows in the house. They are currently replacement vinyl windows. We're going to be going with aluminum clad wood windows, and that'll allow us to have a permanent color outside that matches the existing, and we'll still be able to stain the windows on the interior to match the interior woodwork. On the third floor, the dormers, where they've removed the lattice designed windows that were original, we're going to be putting in new windows with a similar lattice design, sort of bringing back things that were stripped, and I'm very thankful the majority of the original windows are sitting in the basement, so I could verify. Overall, we'll be replacing the roof, again, keeping the same color, but with a 30-year architectural shingle, so it retains more of the texture that it probably had originally. We'll be repointing all the stone, replacing broken or missing stone in kind. Site work, we will be removing
I can get over here.
We'll be removing all the evergreens in front of the porch so that you can see the porch again. Canopies are going to disappear, and the Ashley Arms signage is going to disappear. We're going to be putting in gutters to direct water away from the steps. We're not putting up new canopies. We're not replacing the sign. And the new site plantings will be native, and we're trying to get something that's more period appropriate. On the carriage house, we're going to be keeping the clapboards. All the shingles will remain. All the windows will remain. Basically, it's getting a paint job. Missing shingles will be replaced in kind, a new roof, and something a little more attractive for roof venting, probably black PVC rather than shiny galvanized. Parking lot is going to stay the same. We're going to clean it up, seal the cracks, restripe everything. And we're also going to provide an enclosure around the dumpster. Currently, it's fully exposed. We want to put composite fencing around it with gates. We'll also be screening it from the street. As much as I would love to push this further back on the property, the garbage trucks cannot make the turn without hitting the porte cochere. And we basically have given them a straight shot in and out for when they back in. It's clearly not the best solution, but it's the best I can do without knocking down the church or the house next door. Interior, all the public areas will remain the same. We're going to refinish the wood floors, clean up the wood staircases, touch up any paint spills on the baseboard and wood trim. We're going to repaint. All the original wood details will remain in the public areas. We're going to be putting LVT down in all of the apartments. We just can't keep refinishing the wood floors every time. Bathrooms will be upgraded, kitchens will be upgraded, but the original finishes will remain. The mural in the ladies' parlor is going to remain on the ceiling. All the fireplaces will remain. We are going to take the current summer covers off, insulate behind them, put the covers back in to improve the energy efficiency and try to kill some of the sound transmission between apartments. I can't do too much without taking off the plaster walls, but it'll be a little bit of a help. As far as interior wall changes, we're adding some closets to make certain bedrooms code compliant. We're changing a few of the kitchens, specifically on the second floor. Currently, I have a closet in my house that's bigger than this kitchen. You can't even open all the base cabinets because the stove gets in the way. But we're going to be doing the new kitchen in a way that keeps all the base trim, respects the windows, but gives the person cooking a decent chance of making dinner. One other item is the main porch. We're going to be replacing that railing in kind. Right now it's barely hanging on the house. They're going to save the existing railing, use that as a template for the new one, and we'll be replacing all the detailed box items that support the columns. Because they have completely rotted away, we can keep the columns. Those are still structurally sound. And then as far as the roof on the house, we're taking off some very large ductwork that's been abandoned for years, putting on ice and water shield, which will require us to remove the shingles at the cheek walls of the dormers so that we can seal those things up. The amount of water damage on the inside will require some plaster replacement, but we think wrapping this thing and creating basically a swimming pool will help keep the interior safe again. At the carriage house, same thing. We're going to be keeping the current exterior doors and windows and just replacing interior finishes. Since this was originally a carriage house, all the apartments in there are new construction. There is nothing left of the original finishes to speak of. Again, the windows in this building all stay, and there is at least one original wood window that's patterned in the dormers. Roof is going to be replaced. We're going to fix up the cupola, repair all the damaged and missing louvers, and basically return it to the original look from 1890. And again, just a larger photo. What you see now is basically what you're going to see by the time this project is done. It's just going to be cleaner and easier to see the front of the house. If you have any questions, fire away.
All good?
Any comments?
I have a few questions. First of all, can you clarify, did I understand that there are existing vinyl windows on the carriage house? Or did I?
Yes.
And those are remaining?
And those are going to remain.
But you're replacing the windows on the main house, but not those?
Correct.
So what's the reasoning behind that?
The biggest reason is price. We can't afford to replace all 95 windows on the property. And since the carriage house is still in good shape, those windows are still operable, the funding source is telling us they're not going to fund replacement on those. But we have been able to demonstrate that the current vinyl windows in here are failing, the seals are breaking, and I can't stand the white color.
So you're taking care of the ones that have the worst condition?
We're taking care of the ones
that
with
are
the
still
worst
functional?
condition. Yes, and then one other item to note, in the foundation and the stone walls, we're going to be removing the plywood covers and restoring the original windows that are still behind the covers. So
On the main house?
on the main house, yes.
I think I also saw that you're going to be applying sheet waterproofing to the existing stone foundation on the carriage house? Or was that, did I misread that?
Yes.
Can you indicate, I wasn't clear where that was, and I had some concerns about the visibility of that.
We're going to be putting it on the front elevation,
Okay.
where you can see about 6 inches of the current
So it's
foundation.
pretty minimal. It's
They've
not-
built up the driveway to be a flush transition for ADA accessibility. So what you'll be able to see is very minimal.
Very minimal, and you're providing the stone
Yeah, right now
drip line around.
right now that foundation wall is bowing in. They've got temporary supports in, but it needs a permanent reinforced concrete wall set inside the building. And then we're going to do rain gutters on the front and a drainage system to a dry well in the back of the site to pull the water away from it.
And there are no existing gutters on either of the buildings?
There are some on the main house, but
Okay.
nothing really on the carriage house, or at least none that work anymore. There's a number of holes through them.
So are the ones on the main house, are they original? Or were
They are not
They're
original.
not original.
They're,
So-
they're K gutters, not half rounds.
Okay, so then you'll be putting half rounds everywhere? Or
We're going to be putting back the K style. We're putting gutters basically on the driveway sides of the house to direct the water to the dry well. That's also going to reduce the amount of water flowing onto the driveway, into the street, and the city's storm system.
Looks like on a lot of the pictures, the size that doesn't have gutters and so forth, looks like you had some issues with around the foundation, cleaning, show, eligible and so forth. Proper gutters around all the structures to minimize any future or cleaning like that.
Right now, we have gutters along that side, basically the driveway side of the building, so we'll be replacing those. And you're right, they are present, but they are failing.
What was that, Howard? I didn't hear you.
Photo number, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just want to make sure everyone.
Yeah.
Page number 2?
I think photo number 2 is what,
I was looking at,
on page 1.
yeah. Because it looks like you mentioned, and also mentioned here, as far as cleaning up the sides, the LED and so forth.
Yes, we'll be cleaning all the stonework,
Yeah.
repointing.
To minimize. I couldn't tell if there was.
Yes, there's a gutter here. We'll be adding one on this side and on.
And also,
Yes, that'll also keep the water off the steps and,
okay, excellent. Also, I thought you mentioned about adding a fourth foundation to reinforce an area that was low.
that is in the carriage house.
That was question I was asking. Do anything with stone outside, but that's not.
Front entry face, there's about 6 inches of space. So we're going to be rebuilding that wall from the inside, excavating on the outside to put in a water drainage system.
Anyone else?
Just, you said the replacement clapboards and shingles both are going to be fiber cement? Like
Yes.
a hardy product or something?
Yeah, a hardy board product, engineered wood,
And the composite material for the trim
correct.
is like an AZAC, or what are you talking about as far as that material? Same thing?
With the trim work, we're going to duplicate what's there. It'll mean cutting down some of the standard sizes of composite, but we're going to match all the details.
To match all the profiles and everything. Okay.
This looks like a great project. I have just a couple questions. You stated the existing historic windows were in the basement. Were you able to match profile?
We're close.
like-
We have a much better style and rail Muntin dimension than we have with the vinyl windows. So we will be putting in more glass.
Great, so closer to historic profile.
Correct.
The K-style gutters, what color? Are they a white or?
Probably a beige. The current trim color is a cream. So we're going to try and make it blend in.
The proposed stonework at the porte cochere? I see it. It's good you're putting gutters to stop the water.
Yes.
How
There is.
It looks pretty extensive.
It is pretty extensive. It's a very large porte cochere, but we want to keep the water from splashing off that roof and bouncing back onto the stone because it's clear the freeze-thaw cycle has just obliterated about the first 8 inches. And if it hasn't obliterated, it's covered in moss and algae.
At the north side of the building. So.
And it's on the north side of the building. And the church shadow does block a lot of whatever sun it did get.
Challenges. The porch railing, the balustrade, you're replacing that in kind
Yes,
with in-kind wood? Or
with
with
composites.
composite?
Composite material.
Okay, so it'll be matching the plinths,
Matching the plinths,
Will all
matching
be
the
homogeneous?
detailing, matching all the height, everything.
Indistinguishable.
pretty striking.
It's a pretty striking feature on the
front of
house,
main-
yes.
Yep, yep. And I think that, did you look at, on the site plan, you don't need to scroll to it, but widening that curve a little bit to allow the
We
garbage
looked
truck
at
to
that.
get in, or is that not needed or not warranted?
I discussed that with zoning, and they would prefer we try to keep as much green in front of the house as possible. So we're going to keep the original profile. If anything, we might put stone in
Yeah,
there
I just see a lot of
versus
rutting.
asphalt, yeah,
I see a lot of rutting.
yeah. Yeah, if the porte cochere were like 8 inches bigger, we'd be good, we could actually use that, but my car barely fits.
Got to get your carriage out.
And we got to get the garbage truck in.
All right, anything else?
No?
So I'll report back to
Comment in the
zoning.
positive for,
Yep.
for this project. Great work. Look forward to having it done, especially the cleanup of the whole property is going to look fantastic.
Yes, yes, and hopefully somebody will get into the church and fix that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Richard.
it. Okay. So, yep, next up, application VA 2404, V2405, and V2406 variances for 301 South Crouse Avenue for a sign installation. When that applicant is ready, please come up and introduce yourselves.
Thank you. Good evening, or good morning, rather. Sorry. You can give a little preface if you'd like.
Let me give a little preface
Give a-
first, yeah. I should actually be on that side of the room. Sorry, Brian, to steal your thunder here, but, so, this project involves the installation of signage on the new apartment building constructed at 301 South Crouse Ave. The board, the SLPB, is involved because the parcel includes 1029 East Genesee Street, or at least that's the former address, which is the former Dr. Levy House, which is National Register eligible Ward Wellington Ward House. The role of the board, again, is to determine if the signage will have any impact on historic resources and to make recommendations for modifications to reduce any negative impacts as applicable, if there are any. So now, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you. So Brian Bouchard with CHA Consulting, project engineer, and also with me is Mike O'Shea with QPK, project architect. So just a refresher for this project, this is a mixed-use residential apartment project, one of the few tower cranes that you see up in the area. The building's almost complete and hopefully will be occupied in the near future. Site location, just to orient yourselves, so this is East Genesee Street with a connective corridor, and then we have South Crouse Avenue along the top of the page, so north is actually oriented off to your right here. Just pointing out that in terms of the new construction of the apartment building, this really resides on 2 primary road frontages in terms of our visibility. We know that East Genesee Street is the business corridor with the East Genesee Regents Association. And then South Crouse Ave, if you don't know already, New York State DOT is making improvements to our I-81 corridor. And as that elevated highway comes down, 690 will physically discharge to South Crouse. So there are significant improvements being made to South Crouse between 690, which will be the main off-ramp to get you up to University Hill. So We've participated in some of those improvements in terms of our placement of new building and the orientation of like on-street parking and some of the things that we've done with the new project. Along with the new construction on site, there is 1029 East Genesee Street, which was, as Kate mentioned, a historic house. We've chose to leave it on site. We've provided all of our documentation to SHPO in terms of its renovation, and we have met with this board to discuss the relationship of the new construction and the improvements that would be made to stabilize that house and make it available for commercial or restaurant tenant in the future. So what we're proposing, all of this construction is underway. Our application is to the Board of Zoning Appeals for 3 signs to be placed on the building, and I'll walk you through those now. So a little bit of context here. This is our project site. So we have South Krause now oriented in proper north. This one's turned, so don't get confused. There are 3 signs. One is a wall sign that will face East Fayette, which is our north frontage for people traveling southbound off of 690 up the new corridor. And then over our main entrance, the vehicular entrance to the project is off of Fayette where we have a subterranean parking garage, but the main pedestrian entrance on and off that connective corridor is on South Krause Ave, and that sign will be directly over the main entrance and will be a blade sign, and I'll get into some of the details of the signage in just a second. An identical sign to that would be on Genesee Street. We've positioned it closer to the intersection so that it does properly respect some of the separation from that Ward Wellington house. And that's also a blade sign. So the blade sign was chosen because of visibility traveling along what's a very, long road frontage so that you can see north and southbound along Krause with that blade, and then you can see along the business district the blade that's existing on East Genesee Street here. The sign itself, we can get into some of the details of it. I'm going to skip over this one and go to the second one, which is our wall sign. In our application materials, this sign is considered sign 1. So this is the one that's on the north facade, so you'd see it traveling southbound off of 690. This is a wall sign. Our variances are due to the uniqueness of how the code was written versus what we are proposing in orientation. So essentially, sign 1 faces East Fayette Street. It's flush mounted, internal illuminated channel lettering. Allowable size based on the number of stories that we have is 150 square feet. This sign is less than that, so it conforms to the size, which is 114 square feet. But the problem is due to the orientation. We have our signage mounted vertically along the building so that it matches some of the window bays that you see in the space that was left for signage. So building visibility and context within the building is appropriate, but the sign code within the city does not contemplate a vertical orientation. So that's our variance for this particular sign. Basically says that a sign cannot exceed 10 square feet in height. So you can have a 10-foot high sign and a 60, 120-foot long sign that would be appropriate, but because we've made a smaller sign turn vertical, the height is actually the longer dimension, and we're requesting relief from the sign code for that, just based on the interpretation of height, even though the size is appropriate. The other 2 signs are on South Krause and Genesee, and those are projecting signs. The variances that we're requesting for these are due to the projection. This is a visibility item where we're traveling along the corridor and want to have that sign visible to pedestrians along the connective corridor and vehicles going north and south. The idea of a projecting sign within the city's code is a blade sign that's perhaps for a multi-tenant building where somebody's going to have a small individual sign for individual storefronts. So we do exceed the size that's allowed for a projecting sign. But you can imagine if this sign was, for instance, affixed to the building in a flush-mounted situation, it wouldn't be captured as a projecting sign, and the orientation of it wouldn't be in question in terms of our variances. These signs are slightly smaller. They're 98 square feet per side. And we are requesting relief for, again, the total area and then also the height. Because again, the height is depicted as 4 feet allowed for a 4-foot tall sign, and our sign is more vertical than it is horizontal here. The projecting signs, again, within the code are intended for individual tenants along a street frontage, so the size is small, but it also restricts you to having a projecting sign not above the second floor. So ours wouldn't be appropriate to bring down any more in the mass of the building, so we've left it centered in the mass of the building and kept it near our main entrance for the pedestrian lobby and then also the main entrance for the commercial space that's along Genesee Street. This referral to this body, so we are presenting these variances and their purview is really the deviations that we've made from the code, and we'll be presenting that to the Board of Zoning Appeals. For you all, it's more of a conversation because that existing Ward Wellington Ward House is proximate to our new construction, having your opinion as to the sort of the flavor and aesthetic appeal of the signage and that it will not negatively impact the relationship to that existing house. I don't know if Mike wants to add anything. We'll open it up for questions.
I guess,
Excuse me, comments?
Yeah.
Questions?
I guess, can you speak a little bit more? You specifically state several times in the application that you feel this will not adversely affect the neighborhood. Can you speak a little bit more to the basis for that claim?
Yes. So first is that we are allowed a significant larger sign area. This is a substantial building in terms of its road frontage and footprint. I think some of the numbers, we could have up to almost 700 square feet of signage throughout the building. And we have chose to make the signs an appropriate scale for the building, not necessarily maxing out what you would need for visibility, right? This isn't a national brand, it's not a tenant, it's really building identification that's meant to capture the theme of the building, right? So CODA and the way that the sign has been displayed and the colors and the LED channel letters match the theme of the building. So it's appropriate for the corridor along Genesee Street because we're reducing and minimizing the request of the area that we've allowed. And also, there are similar signs throughout the corridor. We have a couple photos of...
That was my next question, so that would be helpful if you could show, because
Yeah,
in my head, I'm not picturing anything else around there that's of that scale.
Some of these are in the downtown area. The last page is actually Syracuse, which is a smaller blade sign, but it's directly adjacent to this project. If you were to look at this corner perspective, Syracuse is a very similar building, 6-story building, and we did install a blade sign right along the Genesee frontage for that as well. Obviously, it's a business corridor. All the businesses have signage, so it's not really dissimilar or uncompatible in terms of like a residential neighborhood. The whole idea is that East Genesee Regents Association and the business association that exists down there, these types of projects really support those businesses, right? 17, 18 years ago when I was in school, I can't tell you one time that we actually went down to East Genesee Street because there wasn't much activity down there. And with the amount of apartments, both, multifamily and renters that are either working at the hospitals or students at the schools, it's really activated that street front in terms of its viability and the restaurants and other things that you have with like Syracuse Stage and some of the unique things that happen down there. So it's not dissimilar or incompatible with the character of the area based on the business neighborhood.
Had any discussions with the owners of the two properties in question, Mayflower and the church? As far as the sign itself?
No, I know there are some things happening with the Mayflower in terms of potential. There's been projects proposed there. One of them was called the Opus. I think that has since fallen through the cracks, maybe due to construction costs and some of the subterranean levels of parking that weren't really supported with some of the soil conditions that were out there. But we haven't necessarily spoke to them about the signage. They have been part of the discussions with the business association, which we presented to when we completed the original project. those conversations were more about the use of the area, ensuring that we provided adequate parking for our project, not to encumber the street parking for the businesses, and then also making improvements to the streetscape, which was a severely underutilized site with really, single-story contemporary office buildings with surface parking, and making sure that we added a streetscape that still accommodated business parking and on-street parking and streetscape there.
My next question, was there any positive or negative against the signage? I have one, I'm probably unrelated though. The sign, there's apartments, right, on the.
Correct.
On the windows and so forth.
Yep.
Do you think that'll just affect the tenants, the glow of that luminous? Yeah, over on this right, what about the left of that? And that's in there, the light just zooming in on the.
Couple of questions, clarification. So I'm just trying to process. So the East Fayette frontage, that's the largest of the three signs? Mm-hmm. And it's mounted, what color is it? Do they change color? It's lit, it's LED, so are you changing colors? Or is it? Because this is kind of a brand, right? Like this is the name, so it should be a consistent red or blue or. Yeah, okay. So this one mounted on the back side of the building facing Fayette Street. Board, any big issues that jump out at you on this sign? I'd like to just kind of look at them.
Yeah.
It's three separate items, if you don't mind. All right. The splayed sign on Kraus. You have 382 feet of frontage. It's the entire block.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're building, I just wish on the drawing submitted, like you had given a distance of setback on the sign location from the corner of the building. So I'm guessing just based on scale, it's about 30 feet or so from the intersection, from the
Yeah.
front.
That's fair. And in terms of its relationship to the property line, the sign is not projecting into the city's right-of-way. It's within the property line.
Within air rights of the
Yep.
property. It does not project beyond
Correct.
the property line.
Yeah, we should also mention too, some of the original signage for the building was similar looking, but it had the word "the," so the coda. And I think that was one comment that we took back from staff. In order to diminish the area request, we have made the sign smaller and we've just included the word coda, so. But they are within the property lines, yes.
Okay, I saw that in the paperwork. So, again, here we're applying it on the sidewalls, a wing or a blade sign. And this sign is 21 feet tall
Correct.
and projects
4 foot, 8
it's
inches.
4 foot 8 inches in size and projects an additional 8.
Yes.
right,
The
from the building
bracket
face.
is 8 inches off the face, and then the sign panel width is 4 foot, 8 inches. That's correct, yep.
Both internally lit, both sides, same color, doesn't change, LED. Right, mounted, okay. So that's about 30 feet back, Mike, you said? Okay, thank you. From the front elevation, from the Genesee elevation, excuse me. Board, any issues you see with that one? I just want to walk around the building. Obviously, these are variances due to size, and as Brian mentioned, since they're oriented vertically, the max size is 10 feet vertically, and so we're basically doubling that. But we're narrow, so the sign ordinance states it needs to be a horizontal sign.
And you can just see how the bays of the building have offered space to put a vertical sign versus, you know, you picture like an office building or like Taylor Fryer and Kuhn or something like. The other option would be a compliant horizontal sign that kind of sits at the parapet of the roof, which is not as appealing aesthetically as some of the graphics that Mike's created here. So that was purposeful, yep.
Was that looked at all? Was that studied?
The horizontal.
The horizontal at the soffit or parapet?
Also wouldn't be visible. You know, you're traveling down South Crouse, you wouldn't even see the building name, so.
Okay, so we'll turn the corner, we'll go to the East Genesee Street front, right? So this is, in my purview, this is the more important one. Because here we come into the relationship with the historic building. So, you know, we have the historic three-story Ward Wellington Ward House that was part of the project that we commented on, and we shouldered the building to kind of notch it into scale, to meet the scale of the existing historic structure. And so again, what is that distance of the sign location on the building front? Because again, we have 106, 145 feet of frontage. What is that distance from the intersection of the building? And that location is on a stairwell, you stated? Was there any other location studied? Okay, so it's designed from it. So, in my opinion, the sign variance, the sign size, I understand why you're doing it. I can see that. I'm just trying to get a relationship because 21-foot sign, the historical building is like 25 feet tall. So like the scale, I'm having a scale issue.
Yeah.
And I understand the scale of the sign fits your building. And I'm just, that's how I'm reading the East Genesee Street elevation. So just talk it through a little bit. There's the same size, 21 feet, projects 4 feet, sign's 4 feet 8, projects 8 inches. So, and internally lit, same color, it doesn't change. Appreciate that. I just, the scale of it, and again, I don't know what the solution is. I want to state it as this is my thought on it. The scale of that one is burdensome to me on the scale of the historic structure that we're looking at today. The whole reason why we're here. Any input from your design team on that, or any other comment from the board?
No.
I mean, we've called the Ward Wellington Ward House because historically it was, you know, a former Ronald McDonald use, and obviously his house, you know, in its historical use. It is a commercial property now, though. We've saved it for the commercial use, and in fact, since the approvals were granted, we've submitted for the interior fit out of that to be for Cafe Cubal. So it will be a commercial use. It's not trying to, I guess, to your point, respect like, you know, a residential house within the setting of a commercial area, so.
Right, well, my comment's more, it was a residential structure, right? And I understand it's great that it's being reused. It's fantastic, actually, that you actually activated the building. So, you know, kudos to your team for doing that. Truly, it's a great way to keep the building and keep it in good shape and working.
But its historical significance is as a house.
Right, its historical significance is as a residential structure. It was a mixed-use structure, right? It was an office and a house, right? So it was that when it was built, but I'm speaking to the scale of it at that point. So, I mean, relationship-wise, we have these two items that are on the same elevation. So that's like my struggle to understand the size of that in relation to the building that is the reason why we're here talking about it. Anything else? So this is comment, correct?
Yes.
We will be providing comment back to the team?
And just to clarify, does the board, does everyone have an issue with, in terms of the scale of that? Or how are other people reacting to the scale issue?
Agreed. Primarily with the Genesee Street sign.
I'm okay with it.
Okay.
So
So I can, yeah.
our general comment back to zoning, correct?
Yes.
Would, based on the three of the four of us, would just be a scale issue, just with the signage on the front elevation.
Flat up against the wall.
Flat panel sign against the wall.
With the
as
same
opposed
size, yeah.
Opposed to the kind of marquee type illuminated projected sign. Well, I guess
It's a fair statement.
it is.
You were going to say something?
No, I was gonna say, I guess, I mean, there's, as you approach the building from any direction and your view opens up, you still will see, if, you don't have to worry so much about the sign on Krause, you will see the one on Genesee and vice versa. So I guess I take a little bit of an issue with the notion that they have to be projected signs. You may not see it from 4 or 5 blocks down, but from a block or two away, I feel most likely even a flat panel sign against the building will still be visible. That's a fairly narrow corridor there, but anybody coming from more than a block away from the north is going to see the sign on the north elevation of the building, and vice versa. Anybody coming from the south will see the one on the Genesee side, if they're flat. So I would think that it would still be just as effective if they were all uniform in the same way that you've affected them on the north.
On your comment, Mike, if the primary facade is Kraus, you've got your blade sign there, would it be detrimental to your project for the Genesee Street to mirror the Fayette Street sign? Flat, applied to the front of the building?
And I guess just to talk through your comment or comments back to zoning, will it be indifferent just to say that the scale, you take exception to it? Or is there a scale that you would feel would be appropriate if it remained as a projecting sign? Because that's going to be hard to quantify, right? If we came back to the zoning board and said, hey, they said the scale is different, we moved it from 21 feet to 20 feet, so we made it smaller, and that addresses their comment. I think having a understanding of, if it was shrunk in some way.
So the basis of my comment, not the board's comment, but my comment in reviewing this is I view it in the relationship of the historic structure. So we have a you know, a 3-story structure versus you guys is the new 6 or 7-story.
Yeah.
So your 23 feet fits nicely on your 6-story building, right? And I'm not suggesting it's a 1-to-1 ratio, but a smaller scale on the front facade to kind of balance and bring down that visual weight of the signage in relationship to the historic Ward Wellington Ward residence.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
And again, that's my view, that's not the board. You know, the board can speak for themselves.
I would agree with you also, Jeff.
But again, you know, again, not speaking on behalf of the board, but I have no issue with the other 2 signs as submitted. I feel there's a scale issue with the Genesee Street sign based on my interpretation of the front facade in relation with the historic structure. So, you know, I clarify, but our comment would be positive for the signage with just a clarification or question on the scale of the front sign on the East Genesee Street facade.
I guess one of my questions is if all of the signs were the wall signs, would that, we don't want to interrupt.
Would that change things?
Would that change?
To me,
Is it the projection or is it the,
I think it's the scale.
It's the scale.
The projection doesn't bother me.
okay, that's what I was trying to
It's
get
the
to.
opposite. The
Yeah.
projection makes it more objectionable
Yeah.
because it
Different
becomes more of
opinions.
a figure, but yes.
Yeah. And if it's projecting, it's a little smaller.
I don't know if in the rewrite of this, but as we indicated, you could put massive wall signs on the building. Right next to it. That is very objectionable. And trying to quite frankly have no conversation about the scale and the size. You know, if you look at other schools, all right in that corner.
The context is very different.
Yeah.
But
I mean, the,
if we did everything to match the context all the time, we would have.
right.
Thinking on the right thing, that's yeah. How and letter of signage.
Kudos to your design team. I think they're great. I just kind of have a question on the Genesee Street side. And, you know, your examples of the theory building, something like that, you know, it fits a smaller scale of this facade, right? It has a better presence on that single facade, right? And that's kind of, I don't.
Right.
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 I think the solution really is not around scale of that
Sure.
down and hold it closer to that bottom as the building. So it's more.
Pedestrian oriented.
Scale of that.
Yeah, to clarify, my comment was not about the projection sign in principle, it was what you're saying. Yeah.
That's a great statement.
Yeah, I think that's a good statement, and we all have a different.
Good, are we good?
I'd say
Any
so.
others? Okay.
I like Mike's comment there. I
Yeah.
think that's a great solution.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Appreciate your time, gentlemen.
Don't go away.
Okay, next application. MASPR 2417, major site plan review, 701 East Fayette. Kate's bringing that up on the screen right now.
We have handed out a smaller version. Thank you. That 17 helps you.
Thank you.
all. There's pictures on here.
into it.
We don't have exact.
So Kate, if you want to introduce this project.
Okay. Okay, so this is major project site review for 70103 East Fayette Street, which is also known as the Gateway Syracuse Apartments, or will be. Construction of a 7-story mixed-use residential building. The project will include the demolition of 3 non-historic structures and the construction, as Brian will say, of 291 residential dwelling units. The board is involved in this because it is located immediately adjacent to 711 East Fayette Street, which is the former People's AME Zion Church, which is a local protected site and listed on the National Register. The role of the board, again, is to comment in regard to the impact of the proposed development on historic resources. And that's it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So again, Brian Bouchard with CHA Consulting, project engineer. With me is Jess Sudol, president of Passero, who's the project architect. And I'm going to take a little bit of time to kind of, as with any good building, lay a foundation here for you to describe sort of our design process and where we are procedurally with the city. So Chris Geiger, who's the applicant and developer, wasn't able to make it this morning, but his team and Jess's team have been working on this project for probably the better part of 8 months, looking at really different opportunities and different sizes, different shapes, different building height to really transform this site, which is an underutilized, there's a lot of surface parking lot, a lot of dilapidated buildings, into really what could become the gateway to Syracuse as we contemplate the elevated highway being removed and Almond Street really being the gateway from the north into the city of Syracuse as you approach the city. So what we've submitted is essentially the final application package that has been based on feedback from the city administration, city staff, zoning, and other departments that we've met with throughout the pre-development meeting process. And when we get to the end, I'll kind of show you where we started compared to what we have today. So first is sort of just the site to orient yourselves. We have Almond Street. So north is true here. We have Almond Street off to our west. We have East Washington to the top of the page. And then we have East Fayette along the bottom here. So part of our application is to take 6 existing parcels and combine them into one new lot to facilitate the redevelopment here. What we have is a former gas station that's been vacant for many years. We have a single-story garage, and then we have a 2-story masonry building that'll be demolished as part of the project. The existing Zion Church is this parcel, and then we also have Exo Taco, which are the 2 properties that are not under control by the project and are not part of the new improvements here, so a little bit different than the past project that we were just talking about with the CODA. What we've done in terms of the design philosophy here is to really take, well, I've been personally a part of many projects that we've been before this board on. We take really different tactics in terms of how we represent new construction with its adjacency to historic structures. And this has gone a variety of different ways, starting with like 910 Madison and the Temple of Concord, where we built a 7-story residential apartment project and directly attached it to that historic structure. And some of the things that we talked about when we were relating that new construction to the historic temple were respecting things like the building line along the street, where we slowly peeled back the new construction so that the building line was in line with the historic structure. And then we had a lot of detail and fenestration discussion with respect to the building's height and massing. Then you get into like the CODA project, where we were building a new multi-story apartment building adjacent to it, not necessarily connected to it. And one of the solutions that we discussed at a few meetings with Landmark Preservation Board was to actually reduce the mass of the building at the immediate adjacent module within the building. So we actually physically carved out some of the massing within the building so that you could take a very tall, new construction, modern construction, and step it down into the mass of that 2 or 3 story house that we had for the Ward Wellington. So what we have taken here and Jess's team and their vision has really been almost every one of those points have been implemented in the massing and design that you've seen here. We presented this to the Planning Commission Monday night. They didn't have a lot of questions, but they also didn't have a lot of the new graphics that Jess's team has put together specific for this board to better illustrate the different perspectives and how that massing can be broken down adjacent to that existing church. So take you through the site. I showed you the re-subdivision. There's some parcels that are under control, which is the Zion Church on the left, and then Exo Taco on the right. The new construction meets all the requirements of the MX5 zoning district. Obviously, building height has a minimum, not a maximum. We've chosen 7 stories just based on the building construction type, being a 2-level podium over 5 stories of wood framing. So it is 7 stories in the center of the project. And you can notice how we've wrapped the retail and amenity storefront space along all of our store frontages. And then as you get into the floor plan, you can see that the center of that building is the structured parking. So we would enter off of East Fayette. There'd be the center of the building being the parking area with the storefront, leasing, main entrance lobby, retail, and amenity space so that there's activity at the street level when we contemplate the deconstruction of the elevated highway here. I'm just going to walk you through the building and then kind of get to the relationship of the perspective views that we have, just so you can understand.
You can draw it in, or hit the minus sign at the top.
Minus sign, thank you.
Center. Yep. There you
Here?
go. Oh,
Nope.
there we go.
There we go, sorry. So second floor completes the parking level with our elevator and a small amenity area on that second floor. The third floor starts the unit stack. So on top of the podium, you can see the double loaded corridor. So you have units that either look out over the street, or you have the interior units that have built an open courtyard terrace within the core of those buildings. So units could look down onto that podium level courtyard. And then the upper floors stack common from 4, 5, and 6. And then what I'll point out in plan view is some of the things that I was mentioning as you look at sort of the building massing, and we can pick on this when we start looking at the perspective and rendering views, is that we have completely broke away the 7th floor along the Fayette side. I know with the Ward Wellington house in Coda, we kind of just took one building block out of that corner unit to step the building, but we chose to take the entire 7th floor off so that this becomes a step in massing on the whole upper floor. And then there's also points that we can pick on where we've actually broken the building up into individual modules as well and have less massing directly adjacent to the church here. These are the 2-dimensional elevations, so a variety of building materials forming sort of a common base, middle and upper section, brick and masonry materials along the pedestrian level, and then transitioning up to fiber cement in varying colors to go along with the theme of the building, and some metal copper accent panels that complete that color palette. So you have the Almond Street. This is the East Fayette Street, where you can see the church and Exo Taco superimposed into that. And you can start to see 2-dimensionally how the building was broken down, not only into different modules and some of the breaks that we have here, but that 7th floor being completely removed, and then the corners kind of being pushed in from what you would expect on the other facades, such as Washington Street here. We also supplemented our Planning Commission application with the interior views. So essentially, this is the west interior elevation, which is the facade that's directly adjacent to the church. And then we've also superimposed the uses so that you can see what those uses are. This is the east elevation that if you were at Exo Taco would look at the interior east elevation. You can see that the parking structure does occupy the 1st and 2nd floors. Jess has provided like a mesh screen with a green screen on it so that it still provides the code compliant open air, but it's not just, vacant openings that you can see through in terms of the vehicles that are in there. Kate asked us to provide a summary of our building lighting. So this particular plan calls out the 3 different lighting aspects that we have. We have LED, the orange lines are LED tape light that'll box out along the road frontages, the different components of the building. And then we have the wall wash that will be along the 2nd floor to match that color changing LED. And then we have typical wall sconces that are along the pedestrian level. And this was implemented specifically based on some of our discussions with administration to make sure that as we're contemplating this new Almond Street Boulevard, that the building has, a vibrancy and appeal, similar to some of the other buildings that you see in the area with the State Tower building. We can paint it, orange and blue during SU games, green and red during Christmas, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of color and vibrancy to the street frontages, but you can notice that we have completely left out any exterior mounted lighting on the interior facades that would be directly adjacent to the church. These are also new images for the benefit of this board. So we have a lot of different building massing and perspectives to show you. Just to kind of walk from left to right here. This is the intersection of Almond and Fayette, where it actually only projects up to the 3rd floor, and then the balconies are set back behind it. You can start to see here how we have broken away the 7th floor so that it only stands 2 stories taller than the Zion Church there. And then you can see that this building module was actually reduced to adjacent to the stairwell to kind of give relief to this building without having sort of a blank vertical wall that exists along the entire East Fayette frontage here. This is from the opposite corner, so a little bit different perspective along Almond and Washington. This is the other view looking westward from Washington. So again, the church, we have Exo Taco. You can see how we've taken some of these windows and actually across the entire face of the building pushed them in, along with reducing the mass on that upper story. And then we sort of have the 3 wings of the building that start to break down as you get closer to the street as well, both on the ground level and vertically here. This is the street level perspective. This kind of gives you a good idea too of how the corner starts to shape, less mass, actually 6 stories visible from Fayette if you're on the street. The 7th floor was completely removed. And then the relationship to the Zion Church and Exo Taco. The closer perspective right out in front of the church. Again, where you can see how we've notched similar to what we did with Coda, and then actually push the building face in there as well, breaking it up into different components too, so it doesn't appear as one monolithic facade. This is really where we started, right back in January. So this was a 14-story building. The project evolved for a number of reasons, but this was just a schematic, so obviously it's not as developed of a rendering as you've seen in some of the materials that we've presented. But certainly one of the things that was done was Chris, who's the applicant and developer, went out and reached out to some of the other adjoining property owners that had some of those vacant lands and made a choice to significantly bring the overall building height down so that it's more in line with the other buildings that are along the corridor at 7 stories versus 14 stories, which obviously would have been perhaps more impactful to the Zion Church as well. Sure. Yep.
Brian's already done a really great job of, laying out some of the initial thought processes that we had. But the best part that Brian's really brought to this project was some of that historical knowledge of the other projects and the types of things that we should be using to inform our design when we first got started after the 14-story high-rise, which probably wasn't completely appropriate for this site. But we knew all along that the church was going to, be potentially impacted by our project. So we wanted to do what we could to recognize that and really integrate the church and our building into the fabric of the block. The church is really built, I think it was 1911, in these Gothic revival style with the painted brick and the metal windows. So the first way that we started to look at as an opportunity to address that and complement that was by the architecture style itself for the building. I'm sure this board and many others have seen a lot of the trendy, new, modern, multifamily building designs. We decided to stray away from that a little bit and go with something that was a little bit more timeless and sophisticated that we thought would complement the church and, quite frankly, this area of the city a little bit better. The next thing we did was we looked at our material palette as it related to the massing. You can see that the church has that painted white brick. So we elected to go with a similar, we're not going to insult the historic architecture by trying to mimic, but we do want to complement. So we did begin to develop our two-story base, which is approximately 26 feet high. And really the top of that base tends to line up pretty well with the massing of the church. And then we incorporated a light brick and then also the metal panels, those copper metal panels with the glazing to try and make that entire frontage along East Fayette really work well together. The other thing I did want to point out is our building is set back slightly from the right-of-way when compared to the church. We thought it was important that the church would stand proud of our building, especially with the bell tower being on the southwest corner, so that that would really be visible. And as you're walking down East Fayette from either direction, of course, you would see the church and it would not be engulfed by our building in any way. And then Brian has already touched on, of course, how we've attempted to break down the massing of the building, not just with some of those areas directly around the church, like the 7th floor terrace and stepping that back, but really going all the way around the building, including at Almond and East Fayette. And then lastly, again, just kind of repeating a bit what Brian said, was that that courtyard that's kind of created around the church in Exo Taco, instead of that just having be, your typical open air parking deck, facade, which isn't very attractive to everyone, we've really lined that entire corridor with the green screen. So to try to lessen any potential impact there. And then Brian's already mentioned the lighting, in terms of fitting in with the church and the surrounding area, the, scale and the massing of the building was important to break it down into those vertical components to try to provide it a really urban rhythm. Some of the other multifamily buildings in the area, one of which we are somewhat guilty for, tend to be a little bit more flat-faced without that, vertical urban feel to them. And we thought that was really important here. And we're very thankful that Mr. Geiger, who's our client, agreed to spend the extra dollars that's required to do that. And we did that with stepping out the building and having those bump outs, and also by providing that light and dark contrast between the fiber cement material palette, which sits above the base. And again, that palette for the majority of the building was specifically designed to be a little bit darker so that it will visually kind of sit behind that base, which again blends in well with the church. And it was the same approach with the lighting. Instead of doing any kind of big floodlights that would really splash the whole building, we are doing the LED strip lighting around each of those vertical components that we think will have a pretty classy feel to it. It's not going to be like bright LED lights. It's just going to kind of give you a feel at nighttime for the massing of the building without really making putting a big spotlight on it. And then the sconces here will splash the light at the pedestrian scale all the way around the building.
Just in terms of process, so we're here for obviously a referral, right? We presented to the Planning Commission Monday evening. The schedule for this project is incredibly important. We are back to the Planning Commission for May 28th, and not that we'll all turn into pumpkins on May 28th, but there are contractual obligations that need to be met in the very near future in terms of both the purchase and sale contracts, and then also, as I mentioned, with the former gas station, the approvals being granted will allow us to access the financing and complete our application for the site remediation that's needed to clean up this site. And we are scheduled to be back before the Planning Commission on the 28th. So thank you to Kate for both taking a look at the application, making us aware that we need to add some of these additional perspectives, getting those to you hopefully before this meeting so that we can discuss any comments that you have, but hopefully get your feedback and opinion as we look forward to that May 28th meeting. So, comments, questions?
I do have one thing, looking at the page 1 of the packet that was submitted. Just a little question about the relationship of the existing Exo Taco and church buildings relative to the setback of the proposed structure. They look like, currently as they're shown, that maybe they extend beyond their property line.
Where is that page?
It says page 1.
01?
01.
I think.
Just be one page behind the site layout plan,
Oh, okay.
the graphic.
At the beginning.
Yeah, right after site plan.
I think that's the only one that actually illustrates in some way the footprint of those buildings as opposed to just the parcel.
Right, so we didn't control the property. When we got site survey, we did actually locate like the gas station structures and everything that we were allowed to within our property. Kate did ask the question. We went out and physically measured relationship to the sidewalk to that front stoop of the church. So we believe that the church is actually sitting on or slightly encroaching into the right-of-way, which wouldn't be uncommon for an old structure, and that our building is set back, I think, 3.5 or 4 feet from the actual property line. So there is a depth of difference in terms of the building lines. It's probably about 3 or 4 feet where this church sticks out further than the face of our building.
Based on your verification, then you would say that that relationship is accurate, as you've shown.
This is accurate based on field measurements, right. I think some of the renderings that were done may have been using aerials and stuff like that, but these dimensions we physically measured with a tape from like the face of sidewalk, which is a known, because we can't see the property line when we're out there, right?
What I think, if you go to the next page, that shows the first floor layout. It shows the existing buildings forward of the property line.
Correct. So this may have been, you know, we can implicate Google or something. When you actually trace a building on an aerial, it may look different because of the perspective views, but this is 3 to 4 feet of separation between the face of the church and our building based on the sidewalk measurement that we took.
Yeah, well, that's just, the previous drawing, sorry.
No, that's fine.
The previous drawing shows this full survey. This drawing shows something drawn off of just an aerial.
Yeah,
Right,
yep.
so that's it, that's inaccurate.
Correct. You could actually see where they do have the property line, and the way that this building was positioned maybe is slightly further out into the right-of-way than it exists, but
On the
the site
survey-
plan is what we should be
The
looking
survey
at for.
is accurate, so
Yep.
the church bell tower appears to be right on that front property line as well as Exo Taco.
Correct, yeah.
Right, and so then your building at that corner is showing it's 3 feet 4 inches back, or 3 feet 5 inches back from the
Yep.
property line.
Exactly.
So you've set your building back
Yep.
3.5 feet from the property line where the church sits right directly on the property line.
Correct.
So that-
One thing we've talked about, which is not represented on this plan too, is that obviously we're showing sidewalk improvements and streetscape, not only to coordinate with the DOT and our pedestrian entrances here, but our obligated sidewalk replacement in front of our site proper. And what we have talked about is not related to site plan approval or landmark preservation board referral, but when we submit for our sidewalk and road cut permits, actually continuing that through from sort of end to end of the project and not leaving a vacant gap of unimproved sidewalk in front of there as well. So,
Yeah, so just to pick up on what Kyle said, so when it comes to the sections that you provided, which are great, those interior sections, so 8 of the colored set. So what you're showing on those, kind of those interior shots showing the church in relationship to the new building, it's showing the church, keep going.
oh, the interior.
Yeah, the interior cut, yeah.
Right there.
Right there. So it's showing the church far more proud than it actually in physical reality is.
And these may have been done before we went out and measured them yesterday.
Well,
So,
I'm just to,
They were, and my apologies,
Yeah.
we weren't able to recalibrate after we got the survey, but it is about, showing it about 2.5 to 3 feet further towards the east
So you're right, this appears to be more proud of the building. This should be moved in.
Extremely far, yeah, so from that front facade should only be
feet,
about 3.5 feet to the
Yep.
church's front facade.
Correct.
So that's a little deceiving.
Yep.
Yeah, a third of it probably, roughly. And then the same goes with exococto too.
Right.
Because that's showing it based on that modulation that they were further forward.
Correct.
Can you talk about that plinth that the building sits on? That's brick, your two-story, I call it a plinth. I don't,
Yeah, that's what it is.
yeah, it's real, it's brick, and those are the colors chosen, that Bellcrest black and Arctic clear. I'm just looking at durability standpoint and then just this design. So it's cast in all the lighter colors, so that Arctic clear brick would be the base of the building? And then so then your recesses are the Bellcrest black? Okay, so you're really picking up on trying to force the depth. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Okay. My bigger issue, and I appreciate what you were saying, Brian, about that second level course line, that 26 feet off the ground in relationship to pick up the church. I still feel it kind of dwarfs the church. Again, this is from me. Is there, obviously you're at such a far point in design, if there's a modification that could happen, so allow that kind of that front gable of the church to project above your course line of your second floor? Is that,
Can I,
Yeah.
just thinking, or if you can say anything, because it just really looks dwarf. Could you have this here and then same thing here, which would
To actually bring it up
definitely
the corner?
bring out and not look, it look more of a transition of the same size?
So maybe leave this the same, but then bring this back up?
Yeah, just to that.
down.
Yeah, bring it down. You're bringing it down. Yeah, so
Yeah,
that front looks to there, because then you can really see the building, and it doesn't look like it's just, in a narrow funnel, even though it's only, I get the idea, because you wanted to bring it out so you can really show it. But what we're saying is that it still looks really good, especially with the other end, right? If that was open, maybe not. But since you have both those buildings to the side, just to try to bring it down so you could really see, because it just looks like it's just a small little thing in a big area. I don't know if that's
so you're
helpful or not.
articulating that corner with a more of an open balcony approach, or a step back approach for that corner?
Like you did at the corner. That would make it uniform, in a sense.
So actually taking part of the building out, not building material?
Correct. It's treating, Howard, if I'm saying it right, treating that corner like you did above your lobby space.
Yes.
With the corner terraces or balconies, excuse me, to break that corner and pull it back so it's not so tight against the building. Because on your site plan, it does, it's, your building is 2 feet from the property line, 4 feet, 2 inches from the property line, and then the adjacent church is another 9 feet or 11 feet from the property line. So, you're looking at 14 feet, almost 15 feet
Yeah,
of separation.
I guess what I would say is I understand the comment, but there's also because then you get into the floor plan of, how do you make it work with the building,
Well, it's a very similar conversation to what we had with Dakota, right, where we,
And we took just a single module out of
right,
the
we removed
corner.
one entire apartment, I believe, I
Yeah.
remember correctly, off of that corner to start to pull that down. It's a very similar comment here.
It was literally just the corner unit,
Yeah,
which
right.
is why we sort of came back and said, take this corner unit
Yeah,
out. So we were able to
Yeah, we had,
stop, but then we actually removed the full 7th floor.
yeah, there was we had grade working with us too in that regard too, because
Yeah.
that house sat up higher off the street.
Well, without going all the way down through like 6 through 4, could it be a step similar to what we did with Coda? If, and we'd have to obviously talk with Chris and the design team with architecture, but maybe it's not a drastic drop all the way down, but if you have 7 to 6, and then you took just the corner unit out, if we could make that some type of walkout terrace like we did with the Coda project, it would at least create a step. I mean, really, where the steeple of the church, or I don't know if it's a cupola or a steeple.
Bell tower. Yeah.
Bell tower almost goes to level 4. So, yeah,
Because if we were to mimic, which I believe you said earlier, or not mimic, but use a similar approach as we did in the corner, this is basically a 3-level plinth that comes up above the podium. If we did that in here and had a similar, almost identical approach as we did here, we just carved out, maybe this center bay and pulled that back, would that essentially be accomplishing what you're asking for?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be that, I'm just looking at, because that's, a lot of that's recessed back, right? And it shows more in this.
Yeah.
And this part hits the top of that.
The
right
part
on
on-
the nose.
No, I totally get that part of it. The part I'm trying to understand is what the thoughts are on this actual component that comes up from grade, which is 3 stories here, and if that would be the preference here.
Yeah, in a sense, that's what kind of recessed.
Because we can essentially leave it similar to what it,
So that's one comment.
That's true.
No, go ahead.
That scale actually, and from my point of view, that scale actually may benefit my comment. So if you
that's
go,
what I'm trying to get at exactly.
if you go to 6, so we show the elevation of the East Fayette elevation with the church in place, right there, yeah, right. So my initial comment, so we have this with the church, so obviously we're here looking at the church. So if we could, if this course of the plinth could come down and let that gable project,
Oh, so you're talking about it in the back here. That makes sense.
right? So that would, to me, in terms of elevating the church, right? Because right now it's dwarfing it. But with Howard's comment, if you brought this structure over into this corner, oop, that's touching.
And then set it back. Like
Yeah, and had a,
I got it.
setback, that actually, to me, reads a little more in tune with the church for scale and brings that corner of 7 stories down in relationship.
Plus,
to
maybe
the-
that makes the whole thing feel less tall.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's why, sorry, I was trying to combine those two
Yeah.
comments, make sure we got it right.
But I think the uniformity is
I
the
understand
key
now. Thank you.
from that standpoint.
I mean, that would really alleviate that kind of that tension that's right on that edge of the property line. And I'm just looking at the floor plans, that's, the top one's a 4-unit, or
So-
excuse me, a 4-bed unit.
I think obviously,
So you could,
if you took out the 1 and then slide it over, you would end up with like the half a mass of that 4. Yeah, all
become
the way
a
down.
3,
Yep.
Yeah,
might change your numbers a little bit, but
it's certainly going to reduce the number of units, but I think Jess thinks
But-
there's a way to make it happen. That's fine.
if it's stepped back, if you go off of that lobby scale, right? So you have the 3-floor lobby scale.
On the southwest corner.
And, yeah, your main entrance, the southwest corner, right? You have that 3-story.
So this
Mass.
dimension is almost the same as this
Yeah, it would go all the way to the other corner.
one unit. So if we took the 1 unit out, we would leave a similar feel back here. Yeah.
Right, but that would be 1 through 4.
Yep.
Right, 1 through 4 can, okay. 1 through 4 would remain similar as is, and then above would
Correct.
step back. Howard, am I picking that up right?
Yes.
1 through 2 is where I get concerned because it would really impact circulation.
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
but that would remain the same
about above the
if we treated that southeast corner similar to the southwest corner. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It would come up and this vacancy would be removed back to that first stairwell, which
Yep.
is the
Right.
front side of that unit.
Yeah,
inboard.
where that mural starts.
And the
Yep.
parking is just up to that one point, because it looks like there's apartments above that on the right-hand side. The parking there,
Parking is here. Correct.
yeah, so it would, even if you sure about the uniformity of the neighborhood.
Yeah, well, we
You know,
thought about that, 8 stories, now you get into what, type 1 construction, I think.
Yeah.
So it's nominal change for significant cost, so. We started with 14.
I mean,
Yeah.
and to me, that would, again, our primary focus is the relationship to this historic church. And I think that change, how that conforms as we're talking, I think is at least my primary challenge on this entire project.
And it sounds like there's a way to make it work
I
within the
think we
building,
can-
so.
Yeah, just based on these comments here, I think we have an idea going forward to alleviate that.
Yeah, we'll talk amongst our team, the best way to do that, is it to get rid of one bed, is it to take 4 and make it into 2 or 3?
Right.
Either way, we understand what you're asking.
Sure. Anybody else?
I have a couple things.
Sure.
I'm concerned with the way that the building wraps and essentially encapsulates all of the space that the church and Exo Taco occupy. And particularly in this image, directly behind the church, you have it as 7 stories. Is there a way to drop that a little bit so that it doesn't seem like it's incredibly taller than the church, to bring it a little bit down in scale?
Well, the problem with that is, if you were to take just this section, for example, and carve this out in any way,
Yeah.
first of all, I'm not really, no one's gonna actually ever look at it like this, right? People are gonna be down here looking, so it's different, but the problem is you would immediately cut off all the circulation and create all these dead-end corridors. So like to get to the elevator bank, to get to the lobby, the entire building circulation is very much reliant. Like, we can cut it out here because of the
corner.
but like here, it becomes a lot more problematic. And there's really not much, I don't really, to take off units of that side of the corridor doesn't really accomplish everything, because then the corridor. But I do think, it's also, what you don't have here is a good, you can't tell if that is 1 foot behind the church or 300 feet behind the church. But there is it's relatively deep lot, so it's not right up against it.
And again, this is maybe the best case, because this is MX5, we started with 14-story, but this is like high-rise territory now as you start getting closer to 81. So maybe this helps to set, when somebody builds next to it, there's a vacant lot next to it, maybe they do 8 or 10 stories, but at least this project can kind of stand on its own as the type of construction that it needs and the number of units that it needs to support the cost of the building.
Obviously, the context of the neighborhood has greatly changed since the church was built, right?
Right, and we
when that
talked
church
about
was-
this-
When that church was built, there was 1 2-story wood frame houses.
Yeah, we talked about this with the planning commission,
blocks,
like
right.
Paul Revere's house, right? My kids love it. It's probably the oldest, like, standing structure in the United States, and the city has still grown around it, right? There's places in New York City where you have churches next to 50-story buildings, but to be able to at least preserve the historic structure itself and the site is certainly like the first goal, while the city still develops in an appropriate, modern, and vibrant way around it, right?
Do you intend for that storefront to face Washington Street, where the billboards are? Is that your intention?
So,
I just saw that on the drawings, and I just wasn't sure if that was intentional or if that was not.
which one are we looking at?
You're on 7, on 7, lower right. You have the storefront signage panel, yeah, and it faces the billboard. I don't know if there's.
So the
Ideas.
storefront windows, yes, but the signage may or may not be needed because there is quite literally a billboard there.
Wasn't sure.
That problem, is something we've been trying to work on, but I don't think it'll be an entry, but the glazing would still be appropriate for sure. At some point, if the billboard came down, it would be good to have that,
I wasn't
transparency
sure if
there.
that was part of the plan to get that corner as another.
And again, we've inset signage amongst the future tenant spaces to give you graphically where we think those tenants would
that's very
appreciate it,
beneficial.
but we are not asking for any type of interpretation on that. That, we would submit a formal sign package that could be
Yeah, no, it's
reviewed
very
at some point.
beneficial that you have that shown and labeled as signage. I think that helps everybody interpret the drawings a lot better and a lot easier. Anything else from the board?
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for Kate for rushing to put it all together. We were emailing back and forth all day yesterday. So I think the time that we did take, although we tried to get these drawings to you a little bit sooner, you know, the renderings and stuff kind of speak for themselves versus having to stare at a two-dimensional figure. So it took a little more time to model it, but we do appreciate your comments.
Yeah, just get those, thank you, get those models updated so they're accurate, so when,
Yeah, I think maybe in terms of the relationship,
Yeah.
that was something. Okay, well, good.
we look forward to the progress.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you, gentlemen. Kate, you got those comments?
Yes.
Moving on, discussion phase. Pre-development discussion, Rose Garden, neighbors. Rehab at Thorndon Park. Kate, does this gentleman need an introduction?
No, this gentleman does not. Oh, I
Kate, we'll
just-
load you
I
up.
started it with the,
Perfect.
is that all
The
right?
CD sets, yeah.
Okay.
Good morning.
Your name and address for the record, please?
Josh Wilcox, 412 Spencer Street, Parks Department, Landscape Designer, Parks Planner. Here today to present to you two different projects for comment. Both are within areas that, you know, we feel that comment's definitely needed to see these projects through. First is the Rose Garden up at Thorndon Park, the Dr. E.M. Mills Rose Garden. We're planning this year, first off, is celebration of the 100th year anniversary of the Rose Garden. So it's a big step for the Syracuse Rose Society, the Thorndon Park Association, many in the neighborhood who have been a part of it for its entire history. And so we have decided to go through with the Rose Garden and do a one-for-one replacement using capital funds to do enhancements to all of the paver, we would like to do some one-for-one replacement of all the pavers within the Rose Garden, all the perimeter pavers, all the internal pavers for the circulation, and then areas leading up to the center gazebo. There are also areas along the outer perimeter that's beyond the cobble path that need pedestrian pads. There's no actually ADA accessibility into the Rose Garden right now, so one of the efforts of part of this project is to increase accessibility to allow full wheelchair access by eliminating different staircases such as this one around the lip of this little ledge for the gazebo, eliminating that curb completely so that there could be free flow access inside, and then to really enhance a lot of the areas that have already had hob job kind of repairs over the years. You can see there are different materials, different types of bricks. Our crews in trades, City Skilled Trades Division, has had to come in there and reset pavers multiple times to eliminate trip hazards, to fix some ponding water issues. So this is more of a comprehensive, full-fledged replacement of everything in there. So the next plan to show exactly the areas. So this plan is just showing our demolition once it loads, the preparation areas. So you can see everything around the Rose Garden. It's approximately 10,000 square feet. Our calculations had us just under 10,000 square feet. There are a couple areas on this garden bed that actually are concrete. It's just a concrete sidewalk. We plan to eliminate that 100% so that we have a new orientation for the planters to be reestablished in there. And our details, which I won't bother you too much with the details, there's going to be some stormwater protection, erosion, and sediment control that will be a part of this project. Then this layout plan is going to show. If it loads.
Oh, there you go. We got it.
I apologize for.
It's not you.
Trying to get to this one to show you exactly what we're going to do. Good. Okay, just to start with the perimeter. We're going to look at the perimeter around this side. We'll go to the erosion sediment control line. Each of these crosswalks on this side. Oh, apologize for this. So you can see each of these crosswalks. Well, not crosswalks. Each of these curb ramps. They'll get pedestrian pads, the tactile pads. people actually can get into the Rose Garden. Right now, it's asphalt and stone dust. It's a mix of both, so there's not really too much access. And then the central wheelchair access point from Ostrom Avenue is going to be constructed down here at the southwest corner. Right now, that's where those steps are, and we plan to raise the sidewalk up to the level with the Rose Garden so that there's a gradual slope and people can access. What you have in front of you today is one of the Belgard pavers. This is a manufactured paver through a company that's uses them in heavy construction often, but we decided to go with this paver specifically because it matches the size of what's currently there. We'll be going with 3 different sizes, a 7-inch, a 10-inch, and a 13-inch, 3-inch depth on them. Right now, what is set in there was called a wet laid, from what I was told by a couple folks. It's basically concrete with bricks just placed inside the concrete. So there was no real mortar, it's just concrete. Everything under that is just compacted base. We would not be removing any compacted base. We're actually going to add about 1 inch to everything so that we could, fix some of the stormwater issues. And then put the pavers on it. These have a little bit more tactileness to them, so there's a lot of slip hazards right now on the perimeter cobbles. These perimeter pavers when they get wet, they get very, very slippery and dangerous. We've heard that many times. Had some complaints about it. So we want to, really create something that is going to be safe but usable. For this project, that's really all I have for what we plan on doing. Just the paver replacement.
Comments, thoughts?
So this is largely, there's an ADA upgrade element to this to make this more accessible and safer, both.
Significantly.
So are the current brick pavers, those are the original?
It's a mix of original on the outer side around this entire arc. Those are some of the original cobbles. We actually are going to try to salvage as much as we can because we could put reuse to them elsewhere. But again, inside of it is where most of the issues are. Is all of these, linear areas. It's it's more of a brick on these inside than these outer cobbles. And so we feel like just consistency is going to matter, and that's how we want to just get them both. And there's actually 3 different kinds of brick. There's a bunch of new brick that's around the gazebo from repairs that happened. It's like a tan color. And then there's some bluestone pavers, like flagstones, that are placed randomly within there too. And we would eliminate those as well.
You're gonna make everything uniform.
Yep. And none of that's original. That's all.
And it's a hodgepodge.
Yeah.
What you're saying of everything.
And you're using a couple different colors of the paver as well, or, okay.
Yep. This is just one tone. There are a couple different tones, like variations in the tones. What is there now is a variation of the tone with the original cobbles because it's just different types of stone. And so we're going to, have the same coursing, so soldier coursing all the way up on the laterals. We're going to have everything kind of set in the exact place where it is now, and the tones are going to be matching or similar. It's not going to be just one red brick color or one dusty brown color throughout. It'll be a mix of kind of the grayish, the brownish.
That's an attempt to emulate what is there currently in terms of color? I guess I'm not.
The cobbles.
The cobbles.
Yep,
Okay.
because the cobbles are those darker browns and grayish
Okay.
tones.
And that's what we make it uniform, is the various colors.
Yep. First time in 100 years.
Good.
Were you able to find any historic photographs of the paths or anything when it was initially installed?
Historic photographs for installation, I haven't
Well,
found.
early on.
Yeah, I haven't found too much for
Postcards.
that. The 1970s, I do have some Kodachrome images of the 70s
And
when.
I think I included one of those images, I believe, in your staff report.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see that it's still that red brick tones throughout.
Well, I guess my thought was when you said there's differences in the paving materials, and my initial thought was, well, was that intentional? Is that a hierarchical? Like, this is a primary, secondary, tertiary pathways? So to replace all of them with the same, I don't know if that is, and I'm thinking if that's the appropriate thing to do or not, because if we have these different paving patterns and pavers themselves, I'd like to get a better understanding of the reason why we have them, if that was part of the design. Again, I'm not sure. You know, I understand the ADA upgrades. The southwest corner, that will be eliminated as a stair, and that would be your primary ADA entrance off of Ostrom, but the other stairs remain, correct?
Yep, yep.
So the corner, the northwest corner, that historic stair remains. Are you patching, parging? Are you doing any work there?
For any of the heaves, any of the misalignments, we will fix any, any of those areas that could be an issue in the future or are issue now. Those are just more resetting on a couple of those, but there would be more of a replacement for the pavers that go from like the stair edge and inside the rose garden.
I based on the site plan, it looks like your new pavers come right up to the back side of this
Yep.
tread. So everything behind that would be new.
Yep.
So we'll be maintaining those historic steps and repairing as necessary as part of this project?
Yep, and if any of those steps end up heaving or there's any, again, alignment issues, we'd fix that.
There's a detail, I don't know if you could bring it up and blow it up for your paving pattern design?
Oh, yep.
I'd just like to see that a little bit larger. I believe it's your last sheet.
You can,
There you go. Center right there.
And this paving pattern is actually what's there now. So the coursing of it, the soldier course, it's existing.
Okay, so that's exactly as is for the existing brick walkway, excuse me?
Correct, yep.
at least in part, a herringbone, so, on one of these sheets, so,
Yeah.
just so you know,
Yeah, I
yeah.
wasn't sure if
Yeah.
that was just,
That was just probably just.
Yeah, that's just like a stock photo from the
yeah,
manufacturer.
it's a-
Yeah, there's a manufacturer
Yeah.
photo. That's not the pattern that we'd go with.
well, are you referring to the site plan showing that there's a herringbone pattern?
Yeah, the site plan
Yeah.
was in there, yeah.
So that's not intentional, that's just a hatch.
That's just a hatch.
That's it.
It's just a hatch showing, but what you're actually submitting would be is this detail that
The detail on the last
you've
page.
got there. So that would be uniform across all paths, elimination of the step at the gazebo, so everything would be level.
And that's where we have to add a little bit of grade. We have to add a little bit of more compacted base in there so we can get that right gradual slope inside. But the step is only about 3 inches between each of the curbs. So we feel we can accomplish that.
Any thought about leaving like 1 or 2 paths original? Just a comment, just an idea, just to, as a layer of the cake. in
concrete
history.
sidewalk path.
What's that?
The concrete sidewalk path.
No, one of the bricks.
Yeah, there's a lot of those cobbles. Like there are areas that, there are areas of the cobbles that have been impacted by tree roots, which are pretty significant because being that they're wet laid, it's an entire section of them that's now uplifted, and so you have that triangular. So we plan on fixing a lot of that. But there are some of those cobbles in there which are actually in super good condition, and we really would like to reuse them in another capacity to maintain them within Thorndon Park in some way. There's a lot of other pathways throughout Thorndon, historic paths, that could probably benefit from the same type of material that was used in its original
Okay, so
construction.
we're not just going to dump them, they'll be saved and reused elsewhere.
As much as we can, definitely.
Is that surface ADA compliant?
That surface,
Yeah.
I've been told, I've been by our consultant that yes, everything will be ADA compliant with that because how they all are jointed together and when the mortar comes up, it'll be more of a uniform flat surface. So compliance, it will meet it.
A lot of undulation in that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was gonna ask if that's the actual, or if you just provided this for color.
Paver itself, just for a note on this one exactly, came from a driveway construction project in Chittenango, which is the largest permeable driveway in, I guess, Madison County or something. So it's slightly variation on that paver from what would be there, but it's the same company, same manufacturer and style, same branding. We could probably I could have them address that ungulation on it. And I'll get confirmation that's,
Were there any options of historic clay-based brick instead of a manufactured brick? Is there anything out there of that? Looking at historic materials and historic place.
that's where our costs start to really skyrocket on the project, is when we start to get into those other materials. We are set within a certain budget for this right now, using only our city capital funds. But we would explore those options if funding allowed.
Typically, in a historic place, we use historic materials, right? That's
Right.
kind of number one. So swapping out for a modern material, that's a huge jump in approval. You know, it's not consistent that we do that. So that's one of my ires on that.
Yeah, to bring to your point, you said some of it's slip hazards and dangerous, so, I mean, I understand that part, but obviously as much as you can do to make it historic the way it is.
Totally.
The intent is, regardless of which material that you would be, the color would match what's there.
Yes. That's one of the biggest features that we wanted to really maintain, is not to, right now when the roses are in bloom and you have a couple different variations of color, it looks a little weird with all the different bricks. But historically, when it was all consistent, before repairs and all that were needed in the past, some of the photos from like the 70s have it looking really nicely.
Yeah, I share the same concern about the material difference. I do understand the cost considerations, which seem to be plaguing everything right now.
Yeah, right.
Is this for this year? Construction?
So we would want to get this out to bid this summer, have it out to bid and get into a construction schedule for the spring. Possible fall if time allows, but spring for sure. We have to coordinate with the Syracuse Rose Society, who's been a great partner in a lot of this. They do a lot of the garden design and the plantings, and they provide thousands of hours of volunteer support. So we've been working with them pretty closely on this, and a lot of the things that we've mentioned with accessibility improvements, eliminating slipping, a lot's because they spend a majority of the time up there doing the work. So we've heard their comments, and we would like to, help them out as best as we can. What was the original question? Sorry, Jeff.
Material?
Well, the material question?
Oh, no, sorry. Okay, I answered that then.
Yeah, no, I think you've answered. I'm just
Oh,
wondering-
construction schedule, yes.
Construction
fall,
schedule,
hopefully.
and that you've coordinated with Rose Society or Thornton Park Association.
So all the roses will be, all pulled back and
Yeah.
shut away for the
I
season.
I have just personally a slight concern for the removal of the change of material from the perimeter walk. I feel that needs to stand out or be separate, as it's a separate component. It relates to the site, but it's like a sidewalk. It's not an interior path.
I disagree with that. It's more of a pathway that it helps with the rose garden and viewing of the roses, actually people standing and using that for working. It's less of a circulation path, more of a for the rose garden purposes. And most of the issues when it comes to slippage and people are along the outside exterior path. It's the wear of those cobbles have made it very, again, slippery, almost where it's like ice whenever you have a little drizzle of rain. And I'm not saying that that's, the number one thing that we need to focus on, but it is a major concern for the safety.
Or maybe it's dealt with color. Maybe that path is replaced with a brick of a different color to kind of highlight, again, primary, secondary routes that has, as I'm
Like a
looking
darker
at
tone,
breaking
right.
it down.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I believe it is a darker tone
Yep.
at present, so that may be an appropriate response to.
Yeah, definitely.
For the interior, yeah, than the interior paths, yeah.
Right.
The use of it is the big thing that at least I want to emphasize, that it's used as much as the interior for the same purpose.
Anybody else? Nicole, you good? All right.
And you have me again.
All right, Josh stays at the podium, and we go on to Hanover Square.
So, again, same person. Josh Wilcox,
Welcome
City
back,
Parks.
Josh.
So this project is the Hanover Square Fountain Rehabilitation Project. This is a project that the Parks Department undertook late last fall to bring back the use to Hanover Square of the existing fountain. Just the backstory in the fountain. Historically, it was designed in 1980. Balsley and Cole, local designers at the time. So it was designed with a lot of concrete form that formed the base of it, and then a lot of brick cladding. It was essentially terraced brick and mortar, completely surrounding the fountain on all sides, and that made up these walls as well. So like there was the terraced areas that went all the way around it. Over the years, constant freeze-thaw cycle of Syracuse over brick and mortar that we run water over consistently every summer, just really full of time, it caught up with it. So basically, the fountain failed over 2020 when we didn't have an annual maintenance program and regimen to go and address a lot of the brick and mortar issues. And once the brick and mortar really failed for a summer, it started to collapse. When we pulled the brick out to see what was behind it, there was sand. There was no more mortar. It was pretty much the exposed form, what was all that was left. So we engaged QPK Design and their landscape architect division to come up with a new design for the fountain, more of a rehab design rather than wiping out what was there. And one of the big emphasis of this was to preserve whatever we have, and that was the form, the sound, and the use. So we believe that we've done that in this design while making some other enhancements. Again, this is only for the comments I can take back to QBK so we can take this design and make it better and enhance it. But we're really hoping that this is what everybody wanted. We heard from the Hanover Square Association, we heard from the Downtown Committee, and we've heard from other neighbors around about what was most needed thing down here. Again, the sound quality of the water flowing, cascading, hitting the surface below, the fountain geyser just falling back on itself. That was one of the things that people had talked about, was a serene kind of feeling that you got in Hanover Square to drown out a lot of the traffic. So we said in the design that we must maintain the cascading effect, and then we must make lighting enhancements. So this evening image shows some of the lighting enhancements that we'll make. Again, eliminates all the brick. So I'll go to the cladding next. So what we came up with together was to put a paneling system around the existing fountain structure. This paneling system is called a Decton panel. It's a very similar panel to what was used at the Salt City Market and City Center. It's more of a stone panel that's metamorphically manufactured in a factory and then cut into the size that you need. But it's minerals and stone, so there's nothing plastic or fake about it, except for the process. But we would use this panel to completely surround and wrap the fountain while making a lot of the holes and the conduit connections that we need to for the lighting, but also increasing the GPM of the pump system so that we can run the cascade over it. And then we would repair some of the concrete benching that's already around the entire fountain, add some new seating elements to it, put some planting beds into what was a mid-tier pool. The original fountain had its upper pool, mid-pool, and lower pool. So this mid-pool we plan on planting. So when this cascades over, it hits more of a catch basin system and a grate, and then circulates back into the fountain pump. this so we can, sorry, we can see the plan of. I'm having a worse life, really.
You're not
Pretty
alone.
touching.
Yeah.
So right here is the plan design of where all the new planting beds would be located. We'd have the corner beds over here. And we'd have a lower corner bed down here, which would take the place of the table, which everybody calls right there on that corner. And we would establish new seating that would go completely along this side of the perimeter, which would eliminate any person from actually getting into the fountain, into the lower portion, which is what we heard was a big issue of the fountain. With it not being on, it just accumulates trash, people go in there, activities occur. So we would include that grate system in that lower portion and bring that up to grade with the surrounding plaza area. So all of this will be one level except for the benches and the planting beds, which would form the back to the benches. And really, that's it for this design. We plan on keeping what's there, making some significant planting enhancements, and repairing the water feature and making some light enhancements. So 4 key things. And then, of course, the seating, benches and seating along the other side. I can take any comments or questions that you have on us.
One question I have is about the Decton material. It is a newer material. I've used it in a limited capacity on several projects. Do you have, or have you guys seen examples of this being used in an application like this with constant exposure to water?
No, we have not. Not in this case where it will be constantly be touched by water. There are areas of the panel system that will not have any water on it, but we do expect that some cascading effect will. We plan on sealing those joints. I believe it's more of a rubber sealant that our consultant was talking about. I don't know the details on it, but it would be an application that'd kind of be a first for it. It'd be different from the brick and mortar in the sense that we're not going to have that freeze thaw that's going to
Right.
impact
You're
it,
not gonna have all
but
the
we're willing
joints
to
and
test it out. And the cool thing is, at least we can get another panel if something breaks. If it becomes a massive issue in the future, we'll have to address it.
No, I mean, I appreciate that it definitely is a more monolithic construction and hopefully should be more easy to maintain. Do you know how it's being anchored?
How the panels are being
Yeah.
anchored. From what, I don't have that much information on the anchoring system for you right now. We're still in the construction documentation process of this. And I know our consultant, they know more about that, but I've been told that there are some adhesives that are used, but there's also some existing from the brick panel, the brick cladding that was there. There's existing rebar behind that.
I think there's slot anchors.
Yes.
Or slots, sorry, yeah, I've seen them.
So there's a way that we can slot into those and to use that anchor system. I would love to.
I mean, so hopefully, I'm guessing that the intent is that periodic maintenance maybe on the sealant joints,
Yep.
but you're hoping that it's going to be a more durable, longer-term solution. And is the color representation accurate for the material you're intending to use? I don't recall how many different.
It shows a little bit darker than what it is. It's just the render how it came out. It is a little bit lighter than here. I guess that this tone is close to it, but again, it's still a little bit darker. There were a lot of red tones in the area with being Hanover Square and the historic district. So we wanted to model the reds on it, but then it looked like a big red blob kinda.
So you're cladding the entire thing? Are the, I guess maybe I wasn't clear. I assume that parts of it that are currently concrete that are exposed, that's what we're seeing, just the darker areas of the Decton, or is it everything that we're seeing?
All this is Decton.
All of that's Decton.
Yep. These lips actually will be newly constructed because on these corners is where that terrace brick was.
Yep.
And so when it would cascade over, that's where it would. And so we're going to put these new forms on it to limit where the points are from the water overflowing on the top.
Was the bench, is that concrete, or is that Decton as well?
That's a wood,
No, I'm sorry, the area below, not the actual seating.
Here?
Yeah.
concrete, the existing concrete structure. There's a couple of chips in it, on the corners, and we'll just do the repairs on those.
Could you, I guess, I understand not concerned about not cladding the entire thing in the red, but had you looked at just select
components of it perhaps being read more as a nod to the surrounding architecture?
I think we can. We definitely can, to see at least what what that will look like, and get that wider perspective view and seeing if it really makes sense.
I think that the choice of material is smart as a consideration, but I do feel like that the dark tones are a significant change in the overall feel of the existing fountain and the plaza in general.
I definitely hear that point, 100%. Furthermore, there are some other. Oh, I'm sorry. Just the last.
Sorry, is the fountains now poolless?
Poolless? No, not poolless. There will be still a top pool, but that pool will be inaccessible. You'd
But
have
when
to-
it falls, it's falling through grates
Yep, it'll hit
into a system that there's no standing water that's just recirculated?
Yep. More of a like a catch basin system. Allow it all pull up in one area.
Does that meet the requirement of the Hanover Square Association? As they like the splashing sound, or is it is it the bubbling sound, or?
It's
not-
that auditory, that audio,
Okay.
or the audible quality of when it hits the ground. And we were experimenting with a couple options on there. We went from a grate system into more of a, how can we do a concrete with slots on it so it all gets directed. And it didn't provide that same feeling that we wanted there. Everything around Hanover Square, our standard in city parks, is to use black iron, like a black steel, like powder coated, for a lot of our features. And so a lot of the features, like the lighting, the bollards and stuff in Hanover Square, are that powder coat black. And that's what we wanted to do with that grate system, so it's kind of hidden. When, like, at nighttime, you don't really see where the water goes, but you definitely hear it. And it almost provides that wonder, that psychology of what is over there.
Is there any illumination?
Yes, yes. A lot of lighting enhancements will happen here. And this image shows some of the backlighting that's behind the cascades. And then under this bench seating in here, this new concrete form, we plan on doing some downlighting so that people can really have a good place that they can see at night. The square right now, Genesee Street, is closed down to traffic. So when anybody's in Hanover Square and using it, they use the entire place. It's like that piazza style feeling, I think, that we should go for.
What's the material of the benching?
It's a wood.
It's actual wood.
Yep. Yeah, we were looking at either a ipe or a cedar, like looking at something that was rot resistant. That could change through an alternate, but right now it was looking at one
Not like a
piece.
Trex product, or
What's that?
it's not like a Trex product
No.
or something.
All right.
And this project, we plan on putting this project out to bid as well this summer, and going into construction in the spring of next year, as early as possible.
Great. Looks good. Thanks for
I got to
bringing
thank
that in.
QPK. They've been the big help on this.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Josh.
Last but not least,
Yeah, this is a quickie. So the State Historic Preservation Office is seeking the board's comments on the proposed National Register nomination for the National Casket Company building, which is at 719 East Genesee Street. I gave you the nomination, and then I just sent around some other images because I realized the information that I sent you didn't actually include the picture of the building itself. A lot of the other ones that look just like it, but not this one. So constructed in 1930 for the National Casket Company. It was a purpose-built building. The company operated a showroom, offices, and warehouses out of this until the 1980s. It employs the architect, who's George Young, a local architect, also responsible for the former Dome Hotel, which is now, I think, is it Weston? Right there in Armory Square. The one with the
Oh, it's the Best Western.
Best
Oh,
Western.
okay, same
Best
architect.
Western,
Okay.
yes, yeah, in Armory Square. It was designed in Art Deco with Art Deco Tudor Revival and Gothic Revival style features, which at the time were supposed to be modern but dignified, fitting the purpose of the building. A really interesting history about casket making, and I discovered the difference between a coffin and a casket. That was really helpful. Anyway, so the State Historic Preservation is just wanting to make sure that the LPB agrees that it meets the criteria for designation.
I agree, and I thought this was exceptionally well written. Really well put together.
Very informative, very good. I would say yes.
And I will send a
Moving
letter
forward.
along those lines to the State Preservation Office.
Excellent. Good. All right. Motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
All right.
Second, all right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good job, everybody.
Yeah.
Well done. Thank you. Long meeting, had a lot on the plate. So